Good amount of people joining, so let's get started. We are recording the session, so we are able to send it if anybody misses the first few minutes. Welcome everyone. My name is Victor, and I'm on the sales team here at Pipefy. For those of you who are new to our Move the Line webinar series, let me give you a quick introduction so you know what you're in for. This Move the Line concept came from many conversations we were having with IT professionals about how they were more skilled and prepared than ever to drive the company's growth and therefore expand their line of influence within the organization. Throughout the series, we're diving into topics that can equip leaders like you to be better prepared to drive organizational change. I'm super excited to welcome today's guest today to talk about citizen development and how we're driving their success within the organizations and how to leverage their skills to drive innovation throughout the business areas. Before we get started, I wanted to go over some housekeeping items. If you have questions at any time during the session, use the Q&A button in your Zoom navigation bar. We'll get you as many of them as possible, and if we don't get your questions, we'll make sure to follow up with you after the session. We'll be sharing the recording as I mentioned, so just sit back, relax, enjoy the conversation. All right, let's dive in. So here, thrilled to introduce our guest speakers today, Josh and Tom. And before I hand over the mic to them to introduce themselves, I wanted to share a little bit of my experience with Josh and the reason why we invited him for this conversation. So initially, back in January of this year, we started having conversation with Josh, and he's a citizen developer himself. He started the conversations with a form and a sort of a workflow that he was already envisioning inside of Pipefy as he worked with the solution before in previous organization. And as we developed the process with him during implementation, no coding was required. He was quickly able to develop and make changes to his process. And it would be great to kind of hear his perspective today. And not only that, an issue that was costing his company thousands of dollars and countless hours is now something that's streamlined through a flow that's visible and easy to maintain that Josh is able to do it himself. With that said, Josh, if you don't mind kicking us off with the introductions, followed by Tom.
Absolutely. Thank you, Victor. Yes, so my name is Josh Maestri. I have been with the company eDog, which is the Elderly Housing Development Operations, for about a year now. And I had been tasked by our CEO to oversee a function in which essentially would kind of be on an assembly line that would need to be from point A to Z. And I had previous experience with Pipefy at a previous company, and I felt, oh my God, this is definitely a shoe-in, which then got me to connect with Victor. And then, as they say, the rest was history.
And thank you. I'll go next. My name is Tom Shannon. I've been with Quandary Consulting Group for about 2 years, just a little over 2 years. And I've been doing citizen development since 2006.
Thank you, Tom. And before we get started with the conversation, I wanted to hand over the mic back to Tom here to talk about why empowering citizen developers is crucial to IT success.
So yeah, like I said, I started out as a citizen developer, a true citizen developer. The guy who ran the application that we were working with didn't really lock it down, so I began poking around and seeing what I could do and making improvements. And when he saw all the improvements I was making, he put me in charge of the app. So one of the things that we didn't have to wait for, we could reduce pressure on IT and speed up transformation by I could make the changes now today. We could have stuff working by the end of the afternoon instead of setting up a requirements doc and meeting with the IT team and seeing where we could fit that into their schedule. As far as combating shadow IT, I would say that's something to watch out for, because since you are a citizen developer and you're working outside of the traditional IT realm, you have to be careful and should check with IT to make sure you're keeping up with best practices, because it is easy to lose control of a no-code app if you're not familiar with security and different guidelines that developers use all the time. It definitely reduces expenses. Developers cost a lot more than usually the people who are facing the work. And the people who are closer to the work are also more able to come up with immediate solutions. So I think that goes into inspiring your team and unleashing productivity, because if you don't have to wait for IT to try and understand what you're asking for, and you can make the changes directly and know that this is exactly what I need to make this work, I think it's inspiring and it makes you excited. I know I would go to sleep and be like, oh, I wonder if I can do this, and then get back up and start working on the app again because it was so exciting, all the changes I could make myself. So I think that covers this slide pretty well.
Thank you, Tom. And without further ado, let's get started with our discussion. We have 4 key questions, and of course, we'll be able to handle some of the other questions that you guys sent through the chat afterwards. So I will start this one, I think, with Josh here. How can empowering citizen developers with AI and no code align with our company's strategies and business goals, right? So when you mentioned that your CEO gave you the opportunity to handle this project, how does quickly developing that workflow and that solution was aligned with your strategy to bring something so quickly?
Well, essentially with Pipefy, it allows this creative playground, if you will, where if you have needs and wants, every time you get into the actual site, again, it's just a creator's playground. And so it gives you different, uh, whether it's tutorials or videos, or gives you ideas, or even the AI will certainly ask, so what are you looking to do today? And depending on what you type, it starts to produce ideas and templates and formats and operations for you to kind of look at and kind of go, oh wow, this definitely is taking me towards almost like a Google search. You type in something and it just starts branching off all these ideas to give to you. But essentially, for me, one of the biggest things was no code, which, for those who know anything about data analytics and Excel, it's not necessarily the most user friendly out there. At the end of the day, you want to just be able to kind of just set up your Lego blocks to build the foundation of what you're doing, and that's what Pipefy does. It would give you that. If A is here, then that means that it's B, that it's C, that it's D, but it's right there. You're not literally, inputting code. If X equals Y, then Z, and so it's very user friendly. That's what I needed for our company.
Perfect. And for you, Tom, how do you see this question applied to IT and business strategies?
Well, I do like the idea of thinking of it as a playground, because that is initially my experience with no code applications, is that it was fun to do, and yeah, you can see it laid out all in front of you, whereas code it can hide a little bit of what's going on if you're not familiar with reading code. So I think letting people use these tools with guidelines. You can't just let them again out there in the wild, but with guidelines in place is definitely going to help improve morale, because like the people who are closest to the topic are the ones that are dealing with it usually. So it helps push everything forward, I think.
Absolutely. And the next question here would be, how can IT departments effectively support and manage citizen developers who are using those tools, right? That goes back to what Tom was saying in the governance, the shadow IT. What support do they need, right, from the IT team? And I think I'll start with Tom and get his perspective on this topic.
Yeah, I think it's important to institute good guidelines. One of we do an internal thing at Quandary where we present different communities of practice. And I've got an ongoing thing that I say, low code, no code is code in the background. And I remind people that what we're doing actually is code, even though it's got a nice user interface and stuff like that. And so we need to use coding best practices while we're doing no code as well. So I would hope that your IT department would help with some guidelines as to how to do releases and how to make sure you can do rollbacks and make sure security is in place. If you have an application that's facing your clients as well as your vendors, you want to make sure there's no bleed on either side, that anyone can see anything that they're not supposed to see. So I think IT is well versed in that sort of governance. and should help the no code, low code space with that.
Absolutely. And yeah, the security piece, the governance piece, right? Those are really, really key important aspects. And for you, Josh, I would like to get your perspective on how the implementation helped you guys to be set up for success, right? Because even though it's no code, it's an easy to use tool. It's still a new tool in your tech stack, and it might take you some time to adapt to it, right? How was the implementation for you guys in terms of setting you up for a good success there?
Well, I think that the for sure the implementation team at Pipefy are digital wizards because they always have the solution for you. And I can't even begin to tell you the chain of emails that I've sent the support where I ask them, hey, I need to do X, Y, and Z, and they break down everything for you to be able to help you out. Realize what the issue is to solve it. Um, but essentially, for us, one of the biggest things was always keeping things organized, keeping everyone in the loop, kind of seeing what we needed visible from a point A to a point Z bracket, because the process that we had currently, which was just old and essentially emailing, the process was all based off of emails that would get lost, and with Pipefy, it just kept everything on this again assembly line, and it was just important for us because financially it was detrimental to lose something as simple as a request. Um, and I'm talking about thousands of dollars worth of, we lost something and we don't have it at the time. We didn't have Pipefy. It was just emails. And so again, the IT department with Pipefy is just it super instrumental into what our operations needed at the time and still need.
Perfect. And that ties into our next question here in terms of return on investment, right, Josh? You talked about the hours, the financial side. And I'll start with you here, how can organizations measure return on investment of implementing those tools? And how do you see it, right, as you guys have in the maybe 6-month mark of having the process live? How do you guys continue to kind of analyze the return on investment?
Well, the thing about Pipefy again is that it gives the company clarity that it did not have before. And so with these requests that really boil down to the necessities of each of our properties that are housing our elderly citizens, um, anytime something would get lost, it would start this butterfly ripple effect, in the sense of, if something wasn't carefully looked at, whether an email was missed, and now 6 months later have passed, and an elevator has now broken, and we have elderly people who have to come down an elevator, and now they're out of an elevator for 6 months, it creates a big storm. On top of that, we have um, inspections that come about that grade essentially the building, the staff, in terms of the government. The government comes out to check to see if everything's up to par. And if there was a request that was submitted a year ago that was never completed, now you're essentially spending triple the amount of money to get everything sorted out. So in order to get that high score, and it just creates this huge disaster of anything. And one of the things that my CEO wanted from the very get go was to go green. She didn't want hundreds of thousands of documents out there. In the sense of, the way that it worked was, you as a manager would submit a document that would state, I need X, Y, and Z. On that document, you needed several different signees. Well, the signees are all over the country. And so someone might, on their end, print out a form, sign it, email it back, and now you've just killed one tree there. And it kept going and it kept going and it kept going. And believe it or not, like a lot of companies, a lot of paper is wasted. And we just wanted to go green, and Pipefy allowed us to get to that point where it was green, innovative, with Pipefy's DocuSign as well. I mean, again, it was just huge, magna size of how much we've saved and are going to save, because we need to be able to project these on our budgets for the next 6 months, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. So Pipefy allows us to keep everything organized the way it's supposed to be.
Awesome. Yeah, that was a great story there. And then for you, Tom, how you see this return on investment, right? I think here we're talking not only about um, what Josh mentioned in regards to paper and visibility and time, but also the total cost of ownership, right? The fact that you're not having to spend money on potentially more IT resources or professional services, you're having your team being able to maintain and make those changes as they go.
That's right. Yeah. It's rare, I think, that you're able to do a total ROI complete analysis. But occasionally you do get those where you develop a solution where you're like, this was taking 2 people a week each to do, and now it takes a few minutes. And so we can say, we basically save 2 heads, and those kinds of wins are really wonderful when you're using these no-code solutions.
Perfect. So next question here, what are the best approaches for ensuring that no-code solutions can grow and adapt as the company's needs evolve? And I'll start here with Tom for this one.
Yeah, this is another one where I'm saying there are coding best practices that have been around for decades that no-code developers should follow, that to make sure that you're not going to do something that can scale and grow and add users, but also isn't going to expose you to any liabilities by exposing information or anything like that. So there are tons of best practices out there in the IT world. So if you are a citizen developer and you're not familiar with IT at all, you should probably talk to your IT team about some of these best practices.
Absolutely. And for you, Josh, how do you see, right, the continuous improvement of Pipefy inside the organization, as well as, right, the need to bring potentially other solutions that match this performance for no code?
Well, essentially, when I centralize it to our company, eDoc, there are so many operations that I've already started to mention to the CEO in terms of any projects that are pending. Anything that you could put on an assembly line to have visibility from the moment that the plan is initiated to the moment that it's hatched and completed. Um, and it's just a whirlwind of ideas, whether it's projects in terms of roofing that the properties need, to cameras, to key systems, anything that the property needs that we need to have eyes on. Even as simple as something as hiring staff, where you have a 30, 60, 90 days, a year anniversary, and you have Pipefy allowing you to visibly see where it's moving down this essentially a timeline. It's great. And essentially that, to me, what Pipefy gives me is that question of, what if we could do this, what if we could do that, and that was a question that came up a lot of times when it came to talking to the implementation team, when it came to building out our processes. Can we do this? Can we do that? And a lot of times they would have a better approach to getting something done a lot better, whether it was building out a database that Pipefy could read to move, the process a lot clearer. And again, it's just constantly always evolving. So I think that that's always, the key thing, what I'm saying, is to continue to move, to stay relevant.
Perfect. And it's interesting to see the perspective from both of you, right? From the side of IT and the side of citizen developers. Of course, you have different perspectives and objectives in mind, right? Keeping the governance for IT and security and ensuring things are done the right way, as well as for the citizen developers that want to continue to evolve their own workflows and their own processes, right? Awesome. So now we wanted to get it to the Q&A here and get you some of the questions that you guys have asked. Let's see a couple of them here. And then, so the first one that we have here is, and I'll start here with Josh. What are some good ways to begin to empower citizen developers, right? Of course, we talked a lot about the implementation team. Of many teams will have IT involved as well. But how can we begin? And I think Tom brought great points here on guidelines and making sure they're using no code correctly. But Josh, how do you see the beginning of empowerment for those citizen developers?
Again, it's it's asking the question of what it is that you want. And so even when I had brought the initial idea of Pipefy to my CEO, their big thing was, okay, let's do a demo with Pipefy to see what they can bring to us. And the biggest example that I would give them was, look, we need to give them essentially what we want. We have a vision of this amazing car. We need to start communicating with them. They'll start building the car for you to get it to where it needs to go. And that, in a sense, is very interesting because essentially you bring your ideas and the team on Pipeline's end are manifesting that dream, that vision into reality. And so, the first thing is just, what do you want? That the first question is, what would you like to do with Pipefy? And as you start spitting out ideas, they will, the team will start, consuming. Okay, they have all these ideas to throw back at you, and from there, forget about it. It just starts to build up from that point on.
Awesome. And for you, Tom, what are some good ways to begin to empower, right? You mentioned the guidelines. What else can you add to those topics here?
Well, if you can, I like the idea of letting people play in the environment. Josh said a playground, and that's what it reminds me of, because when I first started, I would literally be like, oh, I wonder if we can somehow get this into the system. Well, there's some visibility we're missing here. How would I develop something that, and so I was allowed to play. And if you have the space to allow people to grow and learn, they get excited, and like we were talking about, it inspires them. And so, and if it is the team that is closest to the problem, they are the ones who know if the solution is going to work or not. So I love the idea of citizen developers and the chance to play.
Perfect. And the next one that we have here from the team, and if you haven't submitted your question, feel free to do so now. We can get you a couple more here. Tom, I'll start with you here. How can citizen developers leverage their skills for career growth opportunities, right? Letting them play, let them explore. That will give them autonomy to make the changes and continue to evolve on something that might, gain some visibility, and continue, right, to expose themselves to other areas within the organization, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Certifications, there are plenty out there. There are classes you can take. So I would up your skill set, and that's sort of what happened to me. Was I was working with QuickBase, and I was allowed to develop solutions outside of QuickBase using code, and then I eventually became absorbed into the IT team. So it absolutely helped me rise through the ranks of a company, by starting out by playing in a low code space, but upping my skill set where I could.
That's awesome. And you, Josh, tell us a little bit more about what happened this week and some of the visibility, right, that Pipefy has given you within the company.
Well, just actually to bounce off of what Tom was saying, I literally just got promoted to project coordinator, and it was, believe it or not, a direct result of Pipefy, as one of my colleagues had mentioned this week, which was like, this guy brought this old processing that we had from the dark ages into the 21st century, because it really was that big in terms of operation, not just from a visibility point of view, but from a financial point of view. Because again, if anything's hidden in a company and it's costing you money, you don't know. Of course, it's like a hole in a leaking ship. But it's allowed me to have a lot more opportunities, because it kind of opens the eyes of individuals that you work with, going, hey, wait a minute, look what this individual was able to do with this massive tool of Pipefy. And so essentially now I'm being looked into basically like an IT, data analyst role. So I would definitely say that Pipefy blew the doors open for my experience with the company. So I can only imagine what it would do for someone else.
Awesome. And that's a wrap on our questions here. I wanted to also, invite you guys to join us for a POC. We, as an attendee of today's session, will give you the opportunity with this poll here that should be on your screen now. You guys will be able to create a tailored process with our team based on your project criteria and goals. So, and then most likely be working with us to create and model that process. So feel free to answer here, yes or no, and then our team will be reaching out to schedule that session with you. I'll give you guys a couple minutes, and then yeah, to end our session here, I want to thank again everyone for joining. Tom and Josh, it was a pleasure chatting with you guys, and thank you both so much for sharing your insights. And yeah, hope to see everyone again in the next one for the Move with Lion webinars. Thank you again for your time. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.